Okay, so it looks like we were talking about what people are looking for to get out of this. So I'm looking at some of the chats, and this is good to know. Hopefully, we will meet your needs in this. And any questions, of course, we will discuss and leave time. So I'm going to go ahead and get us started. And my name is Melissa Groden. You've heard about me. Just another thing to add on is I've been working with adolescents for the majority of my career, and they are definitely a population that I am drawn to working with, drawn to supporting, and also with that is working with the families that come along with our kids. So what we're going to do today is look at certain things. We want to look at some of the current trends, what is going on today with our youth, what are the primary substances they're using. And we are going to, I'm going to not do whatever that just said. We're going to look at the continuum of care of those supportive services that are available, from prevention, early intervention, treatment, and recovery support services. And then I also want to talk about really the student assistance program that is a program mandated in Pennsylvania in our schools, and how that can be maybe a first step for families or for providers who are looking to help the youth and young people in their lives. So before we actually start any of that, we want to kind of know, who is this Generation Z? What does that mean? I actually have a Generation Z child, so when I look at this information, it's always very interesting to see how it relates to my child. But our Generation Z are individuals that have been born between 1996 and 2012. So they range in age currently from 9 to 25 years old. They are a quarter of our country's population, and they are going to pretty much eclipse the baby boomers as the largest generation. So some of the things that we want to be aware of and know, and this is something that's going to help with communication as well, is they have a very short attention span. They average about 8 seconds. So I think if we have any Generation Zs who are, you're a Gen Z school psychologist. Oh my. So Nikki, you're gonna have to tell us if some of these things apply to you. Keep in mind that these characteristics that we're talking about today do not apply to every single person that's been born in these years. So, but some of the things that we see is, okay, we've got a lot of Gen Zs here today. You are speed communicators, which we're seeing that right in the chat. You are multitaskers across all different screens, different apps, other platforms all at once. But you also do a lot of digital interaction. So COVID, telework, telehealth maybe was not as difficult for you as others. Yes, David, I'm a Gen Xer as well, so I'm okay with it too. Our Gen Zs are entrepreneurial. They want to work for themselves. They want to solve real problems, figure out how to make things easier for them. One of the beautiful things about our Generation Z children are individuals. I don't want to say children. They're the most diverse, multicultural generation we've ever had. And they think globally. So they're not restricted by the locations that they are. Oh my, we have so many Gen Z parents here too. Our Generation Z are practical when they decide on, career paths and majors. They care less about sometimes following their passion and more about choosing a secure path for their future. Some of that reason is because they have the Gen X parents who really are, maybe some of us Gen X parents have struggled and they've seen some of our struggles. So they want to make sure that they are doing things that are secure for them. They're very private, even though they're, for us, and I know as a parent, I learn a lot about my daughter and her friends, but they actually really are thoughtful in what information they share. It's about their personal and professional brands. So they've learned some of the online mistakes that maybe we did for us Gen Xers who are thankful that, you know, videos were not as popular as they are now. But our Gen Zs prefer online platforms like Snapchat, Whisper, something that is that has disappearing content. That's something that is appealing to them. This is just kind of the same that we were talking about, but they are very independent. They are focused, resourceful, do-it-yourself mentality. They try to see, they will seek things that will be sometimes individual in nature versus millennials, which sometimes millennials are more comfortable working in groups. So we do see our Generation Z is our fully digital generation. They do not know life before cell phones, before video chats. They don't know any, like that party line and answering machines and caller IDs did not exist for them. So they are very digital, diverse again, and they want to have that real life information. Joseph, you don't have to tell us. That is quite okay. So when we look at just kind of a comparison, okay, what comes after Gen X but before Gen Z? Okay, here we go. So our Generation X, which is 1965 to 1980. And then after that is our Generation Y, or our millennials. And they are 1981 to 1996. And then our Generation Alpha, which I just saw someone said they have a Gen Alpha. They are our kids now. This is our 2012 to 2025. So when we look at some of the characteristics, and I love the fact that you're all representing, this is great. And obviously before 1965 is our baby boomers. So when we look at some of the differences between the generations, we are seeing that our Generation Z, they're more realistic. They're more kind of centered. Again, they are looking for that information they want to be independent. They want to be, I'm I'm loving the fact that everyone is representing, but our Gen Zs, okay, boomer, our Gen Zs, that was not meant in an insulting way either. They're independent, they're digital, private, they prefer things face-to-face, which is really interesting because of the fact that they do a lot of online with that digital. But they do prefer, like if they're in work, they might communicate preferably face-to-face with their colleagues. They do like to learn on demand. So 75% of Generation Z individuals have actually said that they prefer to learn in different ways. They can get a good education other ways than college. So they might not be college bound. They might be more interested in research and learning things and doing their own kind of investigation on information. They are role hopping versus job hopping. So they are interested, our Gen Z individuals are interested in situations where they could have multiple roles of their employment versus going from job to job to job, trying to find something, or they feel bored. Our Gen Zs want to have more responsibility. They are that global citizen versus a global spectator. So they have more in common with kids globally, where they want to be involved with global instead of just kind of saying like, yeah, I support this. They want to be involved. So when we look at the Generation Z and what we can do, and seeing how we have so many people here with us today who have worked with Gen Z, they are currently Gen Zs, or they have kids that are Gen Zs. Let's set the basis up now on how we want to communicate. because as we all know, communication is a key with working with anybody. So when we want to try to reach and meet the Gen Z where they're at, we want to use some communication or understand where their comfort level with communication is. Using online communications and interactions. It took me a really long time to understand that talking through Snapchat or sending videos through Snapchat is the equivalent of basically writing notes when I was in school. So our Generation Z, they spend so much time in a digital space in short increments. So in-person conversations are important, but we should also be okay with having moments where we might work with them in email, FaceTime, live chats, apps, certain other online interactions. Finding out what their preferred method of communication is really important, but also, yes, Teresa, we'll get there. But also knowing that, trying to work with them and showing them the balance between screen time and to be, Dana, I understand. Oh, hi, Dana. Yes, I understand that. Between screen time and with in-person, intentional in-person conversations is really important. We want to help them focus through goal setting and asking pointed questions. Because of the limited attention spans and the incredible ability to multitask, Gen Zs sometimes can struggle with focusing on one specific goal or processing certain experiences. So what we can do is help them learn how to set goals, think about what they hope to accomplish, and doing that through intentional conversations, asking good questions that facilitate deep thinking, and reflecting on lessons learned through the experiences. And because these individuals are entrepreneurial minded, problem solving, they'll appreciate having someone ask them the tough questions that will encourage them to step back, examine their actions and experiences a little bit more deliberately, and consider how they might approach situations differently for a better impact. Understanding what motivates people is huge. And, the things that our Gen Zs have been dealing with, they've looked at, they are post 9/11. They are now living in COVID, the world that we have today, everything that they're dealing with, they are motivated by their life circumstances and what they have experienced or observed through their adolescence and teen years. So when we do kind of relationship building with our Generation Zs, asking them about their values, asking them motivations for the choices they're making, and also be a global connector. So because Generation Z views their personal and professional networks so much more broadly and globally than any generation before them, they value diversity. They love to connect with individuals in other parts of the world. So we can actually look at the use of digital technology to meet anyone, anywhere, anytime, and being able to provide those options. And I know we had a question about digital recovery services, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Now, this information, we want to look at where are they today? What's going on in the mind of our youth today, which is this information that we're going to talk about is from the Pennsylvania Youth Survey. And if you're not aware of the Pennsylvania Youth Survey, it's actually an excellent resource. A boomer with 3 millennials. You have a lively house, Andrea. That's a lot. So the Pennsylvania Youth Survey is it's a biannual survey that is supported through the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. And the goal of it is basically to learn about youth behaviors, attitudes, and knowledge. And the questions talk about alcohol, tobacco, other drugs, violence, bullying, sleep, as you can see here, just really looking at the behavioral health and what our youth are experiencing. This is done, as I said, biannually, and it is for 6th graders, 8th graders, 10th graders, and 12th graders. This is an administration year. And Nancy just put a link in the chat, and one of the handouts that you can access on that link is a copy of the highlight report for Pennsylvania. If you do go to look for the full survey, you can get that off the website as well. So one of the things that I wanted to start off is looking at, this is new. Oh, and thank you, Ryan, for putting the link to the 2019 page. So one of the things that was asked this past year in the 2019 administration was about sleep. And I find this information to be really interesting because we know as adults, we know that sleep is really important to us. It helps us, accomplish our goals. It helps us think things through clearly, and it really can impact our day. But looking at this data, 37.9% of the students total that took this, they reported sleeping less than 7 hours a night on school nights. And if you look at that, the highest 56, almost 57% of seniors. Now, that might not be, that some of us might think, oh, 7 hours is a luxury. I would love 7 hours. But for our youth, for our younger individuals, having a good night's sleep is really important, because what's happening is that we can see, this is a lot of information to go through at one time. So definitely go back and check everything. And I'm happy you're okay though. But 64.7% of students then have reported feeling tired or sleepy during the day, every day, or several times in the past 2 weeks of when this administration was. And I do want to point out that the survey happened in November of 2019. So this survey actually happened before COVID. The 2021 survey that will be happening this fall is actually something that's going to be really interesting to see the data as we are in a mid-COVID, I guess, world. And absolutely, Marcima, and I apologize if I pronounced your name wrong. There's a lot. They're staying up because they want that connection, right? They are digitally, they don't have a way to kind of disconnect in things. But what happens then is we see some of our kids who are, feeling certain ways and having this lack of sleep and the pressures of school and their own struggles that they might be dealing with on a regular basis. Some of the information in the PACE data, and yes, Wendy, this year, the 2021 administration of PACE is going to be asking COVID-related questions, I believe only on the online version. But for the 2019, and again, 2019, pre-COVID, 38% of students reported feeling sad or depressed most days. 8th graders reported a reduction. They had a little bit of a reduction in their numbers, but the 10th graders and 12th graders had a higher percentage, saying that they felt sad or depressed most days. That's upsetting to me. Just feeling that way for the majority of the day is difficult, and our kids have to deal with a lot today. 41% of 12th graders and 40% of 10th graders reported that at times they think they're no good at all. 25% of the students reported that sometimes they think life is not worth, they think their life is not worth anything. And that includes 29% of the seniors who responded to the survey. And 36% of 12th graders and 29% of 10th graders reported being so sad that they ceased doing their usual activities. So when we see this information, when we see the changes, yeah, it's so sad. And but we're going to talk about some things that we can do to really kind of combat that. But when we look at that, we can see that there's a correlation that when you have individuals that are listing a higher level of depressive symptoms, then you actually are going to see a higher level of correlated of substance use. And one of the things that we definitely see is that playing out in this PACE survey. So when the PACE, what came out through the PACE survey is, and it's, I don't think it's surprising, but I think that it's worth remembering. For historically, for our PACE, the youth in Pennsylvania, the two substances that they report using the most is alcohol and marijuana. So, and sometimes it's because these substances are have more social acceptability. Sometimes it's more normalized to use these substances. And also what we want to take into consideration is sometimes these substances can prime the brain for other substance use in the future. We did see 41% of students who participated in the PACE survey indicated that they had used alcohol at least in once in their lifetime. And yes, Brittany, so much more easily accessible. And then 17% of the students who participated in the survey had used marijuana at least once in their lifetime. Lifetime vaping statistics weren't gathered for the 2019, but we did look at the 30-day. So within the 30 days of the administration, the use of e-cigarettes and other vapor products was 19%. So that was actually higher than the lifetime use, but of marijuana, I'm sorry. We did see increases in binge drinking in 12th graders who are driving after using marijuana. And the students are reporting that 27% or 25% of the students who participated in this survey reported that their parents gave them alcohol. And I do want to remind people that in Pennsylvania, there is a social hosting law, and you can be held liable for anything that might happen to anyone underage that drinks alcohol in your house. And you can also be fined, I think, about $1,000 per person. So if you have 20 kids, and oh, there's a winner. If you have 20 kids who are drinking in your home, that could be a fine of $20,000. So just something to kind of take into consideration. The primary source for obtaining alcohol for 12th graders was they gave somebody money to buy it for them. So there's a lot of really interesting information that you can get from the PACE data and understand what's going on. One of the things that I do like to share with people is just some ways that people can divert and kind of hide alcohol use. And there's all certain, all different types of, a brush that, you can put alcohol in, or I've gone to Hallmark and I've seen these ties where you can put alcohol in there. There's always that we have things that are hidden in plain sight. Binoculars, suntan lotion, phone cases, and actually pop sockets now that have bottle openers on the back of them. And if we think about pop sockets, their primary marketing is for youth. These are actually fake tampons. This right here was actually taken, I don't know if it's still being sold, but the Pennsylvania Renaissance Fair used to sell these, and it's got a nice, it's got a little pouch for the beer, so you can have, one hand for the turkey leg and the other to cheer what's going on. But there's so many different ways that we have substances hidden in plain sight that sometimes we just want to be aware. We can't always know what something is, but we want to be aware. Something else that has come to the surface of our kids kind of have been hearing about it, is vaporizing alcohol. And this basically is also like kind of known as vaportini. And it's basically you're heating the alcohol, the substance, until it releases vapors, and then they're inhaled through a straw. And it's the thing that we need to, oh, Caleb, our kids are using things that are much, much, much smarter than what we see on there. But yes, the water bottle, they're still happening. There's people who have actually used Capri Suns. They just put a hole in the Capri Sun, empty it out, and they fill it with alcohol, and they can take that in. So, there's so many different ways that our kids can hide things. Well, people in general can hide. We just want to be aware that it's not always what it's, it is not always as it appears to be. So one of the things about vaporizing alcohol that we want to can really want to be aware of is when you drink alcohol, your body kind of has a natural system that if you're drinking too much, you're going to get sick. Your body's going to be like, nope, not doing this. But with vaporizing alcohol, what happens is the ethanol goes straight to your lungs, to your bloodstream, to your brain. So yes, Michelle, absolutely, that still does happen. When you are vaporizing this, it's actually, what happens is we see more people who will have alcohol poisoning because they don't expel the alcohol by vomiting. So it is really dangerous. And it's something we want to, just be aware of. It is more attractive to girls because girls, kind of the myth of that is there's less calories in vaporizing alcohol. Vaping and e-cigarettes, we definitely have seen a rise in that recently. And we do see Pennsylvania students reporting a 30-day e-cigarette use higher than national average. We actually have seen increase in a lot. You can see between 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade, we can see, people that are vaping marijuana or hash oil is actually, vaping e-cigarettes is higher, and it's continuing to rise. So it will be interesting again to see what it's like. We saw 2019 had a definitely higher rate than the previous years because we did definitely see the vape products really explode and just surprise us. And yes, there's definitely, along with those ties, you can also buy the bras in Hallmark that have the that you can put the alcohol in. So there's a lot of things that we have. Other things that we want to be aware of is that, the vape use e-cigarettes, people are not just using them, or youth are not just using them for nicotine products. They are using it for the use of marijuana or hash oil, and that number is going up as well. So some of the terminology that we want to be aware of is different brands. I'm sure many of us have heard about Juul. Juul has become a verb in terms of vaping, but we also have Logic, puff bars. We have new things that are on the market that are appealing to our youth. Other things, e-liquids, e-juice, that's the actual, the liquid that they use with that. And dabs, dab pens, dab cards. That's also something that is, could be actually a verb for people. So some of the techniques that we see is juuling or vaping. Like I said, the action word is the actual use of the e-cigarette. Dripping, or juicing is when you are using the liquids directly on the heating coil, because all of our e-cigarettes have a heating element to it. Ghosting is hiding the vapor in your mouth or your airways, or what some people do in schools. They will if they're wearing like a hoodie, they will ghost in there. They'll kind of like blow it out. If they're not going to hold it, they'll blow it out down their shirt or up their sleeve. Some things you might have heard about is getting nicked or getting nick sick. So getting nicked is kind of that euphoria that is experienced with high doses of nicotine, where maybe you're getting like lightheaded. Being nick sick is people will have heart palpitations, they vomit, and they get like really, really dizzy. There's also in the resources, there's a vape lingo dictionary that you can look at and find out more terminology. But here's some of the most recent vape products. If we have any educators that are joining us today, this is also something to really be aware of, because these are the things, again, that can be hidden in plain sight. I like pens, and I think this pen is beautiful. And but realistically, what it is it is a vape pen. So it has different elements to separate, to remove, a heating element, the power, where you put the liquid or the e-juice. This is, a highlighter, but it's, it appears to be a highlighter, and I would not be surprised if it was a working highlighter. But again, it is a vape product. We have our watch, which just looks like a regular smartwatch, but no, in fact, it definitely is. A t-shirt, there's vape wear. They have hoodies where the drawstring for the hoodie is the mouthpiece. They have the same for book bags as well, where the parts of the book bags that you pull down to tighten the straps, there's a mouthpiece. And then this is, obviously looks like an inhaler, but it is a vape. It's a product. Why are they creating things like this? Oh, they are creating things like this to appeal to our Generation Z, to our younger generation. Unfortunately, these are products that are flashy, that can be hidden in sight, and it's more appealing, I think, for people. That's why puff bars have been so popular now and have actually exceeded the draw of the Juul, and some of that is because of their cool colors and flavors. They have 3 different kinds. That they have a nano puff, which basically is the equivalent of 200 puffs per vape. So per kind of like cartridge in that. That's the equivalent to smoking 1 pack of cigarettes. The puff bar has 400 puffs, and that is the equivalent to smoking 2 packs of cigarettes. The puff bar plus has 800 puffs, and that is the equivalent to 4 packs of cigarettes. This has been something that the FDA has been trying to fight and to ban with flavoring, all of these kinds of things. But what's happening is now they're selling puff bars without tobacco derived nicotine. So it's like synthetic nicotine. They're doing that online, but you can also still get the tobacco derived nicotine off some shadier places and at some smoke shops. One of the things to be aware of too is the ice flavors are essentially the vape equivalent of a menthol cigarette. So if it's an ice flavor, it's mentholized flavor, and what that does is it numbs the throat to enhance the palatability. So again, it's something to entice. We have marijuana use. We see that has definitely been on the rise. What we see more commonly now is marijuana concentrates. And what that is, it's a highly potent THC. And it's the way that it is cultivated or burned down. It actually has anywhere from 40 to 80% higher THC than kind of your plant marijuana, so to speak. People use it. There's different names and terminologies that people use. A lot of this is actually used in vapes and e-cigarettes, but you'll see certain terminology like batter, butter, shatter, earwax. Also, sometimes people call it 710, which is actually the word oil flipped and spelled backwards. There's also different types of this. This is where people get dabbing from, not the arm movement, but this is also a reference to dabbing. And there's different combinations that people have done. And just to know some of the terminology with that, if people mix it with a narcotic, it could be known as an amp joint or dust. Mixed with cocaine, Jim Jones, Cocoa Puff, mixed with heroin, Atom Bomb, A-Bomb. 246 is just another terminology for it. Some of the numbers that you see with some of the references refer to maybe criminal codes, or I can find out the exact reference. I don't think I wrote that down for this one for 246, but I can certainly find that out and share that later. But usually the numbers refer to either a specific date or a criminal code. And then, another other things to think, greening out. So like when we heard about getting nicked, there's also greening out. And that's basically when people are smoking so much cannabis that they basically have a physiological or psychological panic attack. And that's definitely happened. I heard a lot about it happening last year, to be honest. And we want to also just, I include the information about gambling just for the specific purpose that, gambling, even though you're not using a substance, gambling is part of a process addiction. So basically it's, okay, thank you, Nancy. But when we look at process addictions, they're really kind of, people are achieving the same high or the same, chemicals released in the brain, the same types of feelings, but they're not using substances. It's an act, it's an activity. So with gambling, there's a lot of risk and reward that comes with it. And we have, a lot of people, a lot of students that are reporting that they have gambled a lot, and not just, sports betting, or not just, online apps, but it's, scratch cards, lottery cards. So when we look at some of those things, and especially I remember as a child, being so excited about being able to scratch off the lottery cards. And I lived near Philadelphia. So, we went to I remember being at the racetracks a lot when I was little, but I also remember that feeling of when I scratched off and I won $1, or, the horse that I thought was the greatest one. So we are kind of teaching that feeling to our kids at a young age with that, not intentionally, but again, it's priming the brain. It's looking at, oh, I can feel this way. So some of the behaviors that we want to look for and be aware of are listed here. And some of the things, like our kids, our young people, they don't understand that using substances in their adolescent years actually deprive them the ability to experience what occurs during typical adolescent development. They're not learning how to adapt to change. They're not learning how to handle difficult emotions, how to fail, how to be rejected, to deal with some of the typical pressures of adolescence life, because they're using the substances to mask those feelings. So some of those basic life skills are being lost. And yes, Caleb, there's so many of the things that that we see, online games, apps that are causing the same exact thing. This is something that many of you probably heard the story about Dr. Laura Berman, whose son died of an accidental overdose at the age of 16. And she kind of put this together, and I did a little research, and it's consistent with what I find in other places. And, here's just like some emojis to be aware of that our adolescents are using as, terminology. So it's another part of the lingo. And when we look at Generation Z and we look at that online and the preference to communicate electronically through text, things like that, these are some of the things we want to be aware of what some of these emojis can be. And again, the slides will be in the resources, so you'll be able to see this in a larger format if you download that. So now what? So what do we do? So how do we get that help and support? And there are supports available. And yes, I'm going to go through this in a, fast, because this is a lot of information. If we were trying to talk about this, we could be here all week just really kind of digging into this. But there are supports available. There's a continuum of care that we have. And, especially in Pennsylvania, we have such a strong system in place that looks at how to provide all during, what is going on with our individuals. We've got, things that we do for promotion, and that is, how we develop skill-based positive attributes, how we do goal setting, how do we show positive relationships, and some of those life skills. And then we've got prevention services that, we try to do in advance. We try to get ahead of something so we can reduce the risk. If we're afraid that somebody is going to be involved in substances, we are going to intervene before it becomes, a larger concern. Treatment is the care that we give to somebody who has been dealing with some of these challenges or has been diagnosed with any type of behavioral health or substance use disorder. And then the maintenance is that ongoing support, because as we know, substance use, someone who is living with a substance use disorder, it is a brain disease, it is a family disorder as well. So that maintenance is really important. Yes, Christy, I've heard of those things as well. And then when we look at different types, and we're going to talk about these, we look at a universal approach, which could, could have the entire population, entire schools, entire communities, versus a selective approach that might be targeting people or providing services to individuals who have an increased risk of mental health or substance use disorders. And then a indicated approach, which is really looking at people who are highly at risk for developing a mental health or a substance use disorder. So we're going to start at the kind of the universal promotion, prevention end of things and work our way through. So these slides, I'm not going to read these all to you, but there's actually in the handouts, there's a guide that this is for any type of age range, not even just our Generation Z, but any age range. What can you do? What are certain scenarios that you can work with on how to talk to your children? And I love this because we've got a preschool scenario. This is like a tips for every age, time to talk toolkit. And this is in your resources, but even, for our participants here today who have preschool children, if you're giving them a vitamin, just, vitamins help your body grow. You have to take them every day. Now, this is taken verbatim, so you can grow up big and strong like mommy or daddy or whatever you want to do, but only take what I give you. Too many vitamins can hurt your body, make you sick. Oh, thank you, Anne. That's fantastic. You make me feel majestic, just like your last name. So, sorry if that was a rude pun, but I had to do that. Our middle schools, there's middle school scenarios, how to talk about that, especially if you have someone who's just starting middle school or they're new to town and you know that substances are going to be offered. My daughter was offered marijuana at when she was 12 when she was 11 and middle school by another student at a bar mitzvah. The high school scenarios, what to do if your high schooler comes home under the influence for the first time. And then even our young adults, our college students, if they're getting ready, I will have a child getting ready for college next year. And this is a conversation we're going to need to have. So we're on high schoolers. I'm sorry, I'm skipping ahead. But we have high schoolers, we've got our young adults. And this is great. And this toolkit that's in the resources really expands a little bit more on this. And this is information that I think every parent, every adult should have to be able to answer those, have those conversations. There's also another resource that is how to answer tough questions. So we've got other things that are prevention is, prevention education groups that are available. And what's listed here are just some of the groups that my agency has utilized. This is not an all-inclusive list. But if you have kids that you're involved with, you work with, you're raising, definitely talk to their schools. Find out in schools what is being offered. are any of these things being offered? Because they all have fantastic messaging and outcomes. Our student assistance program, this is really kind of the best entry point into helping school-age children. Student assistance is a program that is mandatory in all schools, brick, mortar, cyber, anything, K through 12. And really what this program is it's trying to help students overcome barriers to learning. And those that, you know, this is a supportive program. It's not a discipline program. It's something to help. It's when we're seeing a missed opportunity and something is really, you know, that barrier to having that success for our students. So we look at different barriers in academic, attendance, health, and behaviors. And what we all need to be aware of here is this is objective information. It's observable information. It's verifiable. It's not, I think, I heard, I feel. It's I know, I saw, I was told, or I'm in possession of this. And there is a 4-phase process that our schools will go through to help. Yes, Robert, thank you. SAP is an excellent resource. And there is a process that the schools will go through. Thank you, Beverly. And that is kind of at the beginning, looking at the referral. What is the concern? What are we concerned about with the student? Let's collect some data. Let's collect that observable behavior so we can do some action planning and seeing what do we have in school that will support this student. Let's bring the student and the family together so we can talk about our concerns. We can share the strengths of the student. We can share all the good things along with some of the concerns we have. And then that follow-up and support. What are the resources and supports that can be offered or that can be accessible by the student? And how do we continue to do that maintenance? And there is, SAP is effective, and research has shown that students' grade points averages can increase, their attitude towards schools can increase. There is, a sense of community and involvement and a partnership that goes along with having a really good operating and functioning SAP program. And there's also, you will see some decrease in some of those concerning behaviors. We'll see a decrease in risk factors for dropout rates, truancy, bad grades, discipline referrals, substance use, and other behavior problems. So that is, student assistance, and all you need to do is call your school, maybe call the school counselor in your building, or talk to the school administrator and find out, what can I do to get my student involved with the SAP team? How can I make a referral? Or you can actually go to one of the resources that I have here, the Pennsylvania Student Assistance Program. The Pennsylvania Network for Student Assistance Services is the second bullet point here, and they will have all sorts of information about SAP and who can you contact. Yeah, Lauren, SAP SAP's been around since '84, and unfortunately, not enough people know about it. So I definitely bring it up. I've utilized it myself. I've worked with kids through the program, and it works. It works but we want to have it functioning. So here's some additional resources that are, again, you'll have this if you download these slides. Now we're going to move into, some of that treatment. And I am, again, I'm trying to give you all this information, but I want to leave time for questions and answers. So we've got different types of treatment that may be available to our individuals. Outpatient is, a low or medium intensity type of support. They might have, going to someplace, or maybe it's through telehealth. Intensive outpatient programs, they're more of a medium to a high intensity program. There's going to be, instead of where outpatient, it might be once a week. Intensive outpatient, you might need like 3 times a week. We've got partial hospitalization programs where you might spend half a day in a program getting some support, some behavioral health support, and then do your education as well. Residential is medium to high intensity. I did see someone here works in a group home, and that's part of my history too, is working in a group home. And that's something that, you know, residential could also be a rehab where you have people that live there and they stay there as while they get the treatment and support that they need. Same thing with inpatient, but inpatient could be more in a special unit. It could be a hospital, medical clinic, or it could be, you know, for a specific rehabilitation service. There's different types of treatment services. Individual counseling, obviously one-on-one. Group counseling could be a small group, maybe 6 to 10 people, and just talking about struggles and experiences to know they're not alone. That's something that our generations of kids need to know, is that they are not alone in this. Their experiences are unique to them, but there are other people who have experienced similar situations and can help. Educational services and supports are, you know, some classes or ways just to help build skills. Vocational services, again, skills, life skills. And some of those life skills are included in those prevention programs I talked about. Different type of mental health treatment that might just work with the individual. And it might be someone who's working with both the mental health and the substance use, the co-occurring nature of the disorders. Family services and continuing care is that recovery support, which is so essential. So when we look at recovery supports themselves, we can kind of break them down into, for our young people, community-based supports and academic recovery supports that are available. So when we look at some of our community supports, these are like mutual aid groups. Some of you might know them as 12-step groups. And they have, you know, they share a lot of features that are similar to one another. The members share the same type of concern, or maybe the same, you know, for Alcoholics Anonymous, maybe, you know, those individuals are individuals who are in recovery or going towards recovery from an alcohol use disorder. But they share a status, they value the knowledge, they value the learning from one another. They focus on goals. It is a huge community. They are led by members. They're historically, they've been around since the 18th century, so they are long lasting. But when we look at, we have to look at like what is going to help meet the needs of our Generation Z. So when we look at some of youth-focused mutual aid groups, there are Alcoholic Anonymous groups that are specific to youth and young adults. Al-Anon family groups that are for family members. I absolutely, if you have a young person in your life who is living with a substance use disorder, as a family member, you should be educated as well. So you understand addiction and you understand kind of the path to recovery. Because I Love You is a program for parents whose children have been involved with substances. Families Anonymous, GRASP is a program for family members who have lost their children to addiction or to substance use disorders. In the Rooms, a social network, recovery network. We also have Narcotics Anonymous. We have all of these different types of information, and some of this, like Smart Recovery, is something that is, they do have a teen and youth Smart Recovery, and basically the tenets of that is you know, that youth, they are in control. Yep, families in recovery, so many different things. Smart Recovery's peer support. And this is not, again, these are not all-inclusive lists. These are some that that cater more or might be more approachable for our Generation Zs. So we've got peer supports in Smart Recovery. There's a message board. So again, there's that digital component. They have online meetings as well. There is All Recovery is non-denominational, and sometimes for our young people, they appreciate that. So, you know, it's just supporting recovery, and there's no wrong way to get into recovery. What we do, what this is these are multiple pathways to recovery. There is no one path that one person will take. You have to take the path that best fits that individual. In our Generation Z, we want to look at, you know, some of the things. If we've got faith-based youth and young adults, Celebrate Recovery might be something that they would be interested in as well, because it is a faith-based process, and there's time for worship, there's time for connections, there's times for fellowship involved. Wired Recovery is something that we've seen actually a lot of tech-based approach of apps, of of virtual meetings through COVID that exploded. But when we look at our Generation Z, who is really looking for kind of that global connection, we have people that are attending meetings with people from different countries. And, you know, that is something that it's huge. Yeah, Dharma Recovery, there's so many things. You know, in the Southeast Pennsylvania area, we've got an agency, Unity Recovery, who has really done a lot with recovery support services digitally and virtually. Our agency has done it. There's so many. And you know, it's just, we'll talk in a minute about how you can find these things and what you need to look for. So you've got, you know, some of these evidence-based approaches that you might find in treatment as well, and how to work with people. Peer support is a huge component of recovery support, because peer support is you provide services with someone, not to or for someone. Do you need to be 18 to have a CRS working with you? There are actually, there are specific programs. I know our agency has a training program that we provide youth CRS training, and it's from 12 to youth and young adults. So we look from 12 to the age 24. If you are, I would ask, if you're searching for recovery support services for someone who's under the age of 18, I would just ask the recovery support or the agency, do you have somebody who, you know, maybe specializes in working with adolescents? Because I think that's a huge thing. And, you know, we want to make sure that the individuals, that the peers that are working with our young people understand what our young people are going through. Not to say that, you know, someone my age can't work with a youth, but, you know, we just have to pay attention to all different things. There's certain other things that alternative peer groups are really popular with our young people, because it's about fun. It's about, you know, having events and activities where substances aren't part of, you know, how to have fun. So it's, you know, there are 12-step meetings, they include family, you know, but you have fun. They let the youth be youth. There's also recovery high schools that are around. I don't know the exact number of how many recovery high schools we have, but they are growing. And the beauty of the recovery high school is it's a small environment that the kids actually receive recovery support services while they're also maintaining the education that will meet the academic standards for PDE. As long as they're approved, I would, you know, they work closely together with PDE as well. So that's something that if you have youth or young adults that are school aged, that you are concerned with, that really need a change in the environment, I would certainly encourage to look at the recovery high schools. For our young adults who are college bound, there's collegiate recovery communities as well. And the beauty of these is it also offers an environment for individuals who are in recovery to maybe live in housing that everyone else in the housing is in recovery as well. That there are meetings and activities that they can do. We always, not always, but we often think about college as, that's where people go to drink and do things. But what about the individuals who are in recovery, who want to have that college experience, but want to do it without substances? Well, being involved in a collegiate recovery community is that option for them. And there's a lot of them growing. And there's, this is the information. This is, there's so many different things, just the emotional support, information, just looking at, scholarships that are available, and just the community, having that recovery community is essential. So when you're looking at trying to find these, what you want to do is, just be aware of what the supports are. Find out, what are the resources, what are meetings, what are the, are they appropriate for our young people, for our Generation Z? Are they something that you can access digitally? Link people early. And that first 90 days in recovery is vital. We want to make sure that we're providing support. That's a hard journey to go through. It's a very strong journey to go through. So we want to make sure. Some of the things also to take into consideration is, are there, problems with transportation? What might there be, what safety concerns might there be? So having these discussions and being aware, because as you're then trying to navigate through these systems, and again, in your resources, there is kind of a guide for how to navigate through these systems. You want to explore your options. You want to look at the needs of that Generation Z that you are paying attention to. Caleb, yes, absolutely. Be aware. All of our state agencies, all of our licensed agencies get monitored, and you can actually, I don't know if this is still true, but at one point you could access those monitoring results to see, are these individuals following what the state guidelines are for having these programs in place. You want to look at the financial considerations. How much out of pocket? How much would insurance cover? Is there county funding? We'll talk about county support in a minute. Finding that agency or that provider, starting that, and again, that recovery support service. So how do you find this help? There's two things just to be aware of. First is there are two there's two acts in Pennsylvania that can contribute to how people access treatment and services. Act 65 is actually mental health, looking at confidentiality and consent. Act 65 basically tells you who has the right to deny treatment or to request treatment. And interestingly enough, it is the adolescent and it is the parent. So there are ways that, it's this Act 65 looks at who can provide consent for voluntary mental health treatment of minors, both inpatient and outpatient, and who actually can consent to the records. So it's something that, be aware of that, do a little bit more research. All you have to do is just Google Act 65 of PA. Act 53 as well to be aware of. That's the involuntary commitment of minors to drug and alcohol treatment in Pennsylvania. This is a good resource to be aware of. However, this should be something, try the things we talked about before. Try student assistance, try outpatient, try some of those things before you get to this step, because we want to make sure that we're supporting. Act 53 is fantastic, but it is a process to go through. So we want to try supportive before we go through maybe a court ordered. So how do you find these things? Well, the Pennsylvania Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs actually oversees our substance use services, prevention, intervention, treatment, all of that. And they have kind of what's called single county authorities. So a single county authority is your county agency that helps with, it's our drug and alcohol programs that help with treatment funding. They will help do assessments, make referrals, match treatment and service needs. So you can go to the DDAC, that's what we call the Department of Drug and Alcohol Programs. So you can go to the DDAC website and you can go, if you see right here, it's kind of like where that is, you go to the website, go to Get Help Now, go to County Drug and Alcohol offices, and you can select here, look at your county, and it'll give you the list of your county offices. And Carolyn, yes, CCBH is definitely, especially when you're dealing with insurances, they'll be able to help with behavioral health treatment. But if you're looking for your drug and alcohol county office, this is your place to go to find that. And just for an example, I'm using my county drug and alcohol. I'm in Bucks County. So we have the Bucks County Drug and Alcohol Commission. This is the landing page for their website. So you can see there's all sorts of things. How do I get Narcan? I need help now. Someone I know needs help. So what some things that we want to be involved or understand is our county actually does prioritize adolescents as a population to provide support to. So if there is treatment that is needed for adolescents that is not maybe covered by insurance or families don't have insurance, there is a process that you can go to with working with your county to maybe obtain funding for that treatment or that care. But this is also going to your county, single county authority, finding who they are. They're also going to list all of the services that I just talked about. They're going to list the services that are available in your counties, and even maybe the providers that do it. So this is definitely something to have. Also on the DDAC website is if you're looking for treatment or funding, you can search in this area. And then if the national findtreatment.gov is another way that you can find treatment. Maybe you have family members that are not in Pennsylvania and you're trying to find some resources and supports for them. So in closing, again, I know a lot of information. I'm really, really trying to leave the time for the questions and answers. One of the things to think about, how do we engage our kids? We talked about Generation Z and the characteristics, and we know that our kids are Generation Z. They want to be involved. They have a very high social justice drive, high moral code. So one of the things that you can look at, I'm a preventionist. So when we look at some of the things from a prevention standpoint, we have this social development strategy, and it has 5 components. It's providing opportunities to young people for active participation and meaningful interaction with pro-social skills, teaching young people the skills they need to succeed, recognizing, providing consistent, meaningful, and specific praise and recognition for the effort, improvement, and achievement, bonding, acknowledging those efforts, providing a sense of attachment and emotional connection, a commitment to people and groups to provide that recognition, and clear standards for behaviors. Really understanding in that bonding process, the young people will become motivated to live according to the health standards of the person or the group that they're bonded to. So there's some things that, again, not an all-inclusive list, but just some things that we've been involved with, opportunities for youth involvement on a state level or on a county level that, is pro-social, and actually it has, kind of that give back, that global awareness that our kids are looking for. In Pennsylvania, there's the tobacco resistance unit, and I can say that the kids that are involved in that were actually part of the process for raising the legal age to sell cigarettes to 21. Drug-free communities, coalitions, they have to have youth involvement. So there's, a community involvement in working with coalitions to spread awareness, education, prevention. In the schools, there's Students Against Destructive Decisions. So there's so many things This is just a little list of things that I think are common across the Commonwealth to be able to have and get involved with. But again, if you talk to your local agencies, if you talk to your local SEAs, your prevention agencies, yeah, absolutely. And that's something that we can do. So now, questions.
That was an awesome presentation, Melissa.
Okay.
We have about 12 questions or so. We'll see how many we can get through.
And I will try my best to answer. And if there's something, if you want to send me questions after that we don't answer, I can type up responses and give that back to you to post on that resource site again.
Okay. So quick, this one should be a quick one.
Okay.
Christina wanted to know, can the dates as far as the generations are concerned, can they slide a bit? Because she was wondering about the characteristics and they seem to align with the 94, 95 group that she works with.
Yeah, there's some, I think any place you go, you might see a little difference between, the age ranges. But they generally stay around, but I think, we definitely see some on the cusp of.
How are the participating school students recruited to participate in this survey? And I think Julie was talking about the PACE survey.
Yes.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no problem. So the PACE survey is actually the schools will opt in to administering the survey. And then usually there'll be notifications sent out to the parents of 6th grade, 8th grade, 10th grade, and 12th grade. Not all schools do 6th grade, but 6th grade is really important because that's kind of a baseline for us. But they will get sent home information about the survey itself and opt out if parents are not, do not want. But for the most part, it's available to all the schools in Pennsylvania.
Okay, because she was wondering, she said she didn't see any Pittsburgh public schools or Philadelphia school or only 4 schools in Philadelphia counties in the 2019 survey. So
Philadelphia and Pittsburgh, I think because they're so large, there's some, there's some work that's done, but there's been some, they do some other surveys. I think the youth behavior risk survey is done maybe in Philadelphia. So there's maybe some competing surveys.
So Lauren was wondering, are the Gen Zers more active in getting more involved in after school activities than other generations? She knew that there was a big push with the millennials to be so well-rounded and so involved that they often bounce between academics, sports, and other activities.
I think, from my experience in the Gen Zers that I've worked with, I see that there's more global involvement, not necessarily more involvement in sports, things like that. But more involvement in social movements. If you look at the Gen Zers Instagram stories, there's a lot of global messaging. So there's that community, but maybe not everyone is pushed towards some of those extracurriculars.
So Allison was wondering, she had a question. I thought this was interesting. She said the PCP told her 16-year-old to correct his sleep issues by turning off all screens at 6 p.m. and going to bed at 8:30, 9 p.m. for about a month. She wondered how he would do his homework without a school laptop and felt like she was cutting off his lifeline to his friends during prime social time. She wanted to know, is it a realistic expectation for Gen Z, and are there other solutions to helping teenagers get more sleep?
I think there's definitely research that shows that you should stop screen time a couple hours before you go to sleep. With the Gen Zs, it's looking at those goal setting. So maybe setting a structure of a schedule together and looking at how to manage time, because time management absolutely is going to be needed. So Yeah, I can see that. I can see both sides of that.
Yeah, it's funny because my thought is it sounds like they're trying to create habit
Yeah.
by doing it at certain times and things of that nature. So
I find, yeah, I don't know if I've said to my Gen Z child, you need to get off the screen by 6.
right.
If that would work.
Do you have any suggestions for folks who are resistant to accessing services or help?
Talk, really kind of having that conversation, and don't give up, because you might have to try like 20 times before someone's going to listen to you. Just be consistent in that support. Listen to them, and try to understand what they're looking for or what they identify as their need. Just it's sometimes you have to be really patient.
Yeah. So Caleb wanted to know your thoughts on harm reduction versus total sobriety, especially when it comes to prevention education.
Yeah, I think, again, we go to, there's multiple pathways of recovery. So what works for someone is not going to work for others. And there is definitely, there are definitely specific groups and mutual aids for individuals who maybe are using medication-assisted treatment, for individuals who use a harm reduction model. So it would be really important if you're working with someone to link them with those resources that support the same thing, because we've seen recovery is possible. It's just my idea of recovery is not going to be your idea of recovery. So you have to understand that there's a difference, and we can't tell people what's right for them because we're not them.
Gotcha. So Danielle wanted to had made an observation. She says she discovered Instagram pages selling marijuana products in the form of Fruity Pebbles. My guess is that they were selling edibles and things of that nature. She wanted to know what's the best practice for approaching this danger.
I think it's that conversation. It's looking at, hey, look what I just saw on, Instagram. What does this mean? Like, have you seen this before? And, it's, I know it sounds easy, but it's hard. We have to have those conversations, those open conversations. That's why that toolkit is so great, to really think, how can you approach this? Because, if you're looking at it as, what does this mean versus, are you doing this too? There's a difference. And your young person might be a little bit more open to a conversation.
All right. Well, just trying to be mindful of time. It's 3:59 right now. I wanted to thank you, Melissa, for such a informative presentation.
Thank you.
Everybody who was in attendance was saying it's such a great presentation. So you didn't let us down on that Jordan.
Yes, I do feel like the goat now. So all right, I'll take it. Thank you. You're doing my self-esteem wonders right now. Thank you all.
So let's see here. We are closing up.
Melissa, you are so amazing. To start out with all the technical problems and to be cool, calm, and collected, you had to reboot, for goodness sakes. And then just slide in and just keep going like everything was fine. You're amazing.
Thank you. I appreciate that, because there was definitely a panic moment when I couldn't even shut off my laptop, and I kept seeing and hearing you, but could not say anything because I couldn't get it to shut off. So it all works out in the end.
It does. We thank you. And we could not have ended on a better webinar. All of this information is so needed and so timely. And I personally thank you, Melissa, on behalf of PA Care.
Yeah,
and I thank you for having me. I think I appreciate the opportunity, and I'm loving reading the comments in the chat. And this was fun.
It was. So with that said, I want to say thank you to everyone in attendance. If you've attended any of our webinars before, this webinar series has been such a great success for us. We started webinars way back in December, and we've been putting on at least 2 a month ever since then. And this marks our last webinar for this grant year. Hopefully we will be able to be with you in some form of fashion next year with some webinar presentations. So we'll have our fingers crossed for that. But we'd like to thank everyone, and we hope that we were able to bring you all some good information and some insightful things to kind of think about as you move along through this life. So thank you everybody who has attended 1, 2, or all of the webinars. We really appreciate it. And with that said, I wish you all well, peace, love, and all that. Have a good evening, everyone.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.